My brother Wylie was born in Montreal, Quebec on March 3rd, 1941, to an English actress and an advertising executive who was the son of a bank manager. They had met on board an ocean liner traveling between Southampton and New York just before the outbreak of the Second World War. She was fleeing the impending chaos in Europe to a safe haven in America, and he was returning to Montreal via the port of New York after being rebuffed in a marriage proposal he had made to in person to a Miss Brown to whom he had been corresponding for several years. Mother had inherited money from my grandfather's estate after his career as a successful wine merchant in England, which helped my parents settle well on the affluent side of Mount Royal after they married in 1938. My father worked for Canadian Industries Limited as a sales and advertising manager, and my mother was a theater patron and socialite. On Sunday, March 15, 2009, I received a call from my younger brother in Toronto telling me to get on a plane as soon as possible if I wanted to see my older brother before he passed away. I immediately packed a walk-on bag and boarded a red-eye for Toronto. Landed at 6 a.m. at Pearson. My brother, his wife, their son, got into his car and we drove up to Kingston General Hospital in Kingston, Ontario. When Wylie first saw us at the foot of his bed in intensive care, he had a startled look of disbelief on his face, as he had previously rebuffed our attempts to visit him after his cancer diagnosis. He was a proud man and probably didn't want us to see him in such conditions. By Tuesday, he was resigned to the fact that his cancer had reached his brain and was now shutting down his kidneys, and time was getting short. He was glad we were there to support him. We visited him in brief stints throughout the day and night. And for the first time in his life, he gave me a hug and a kiss. Told me he loved it. He loved me. For my big brother, that was a big deal. And I realized that the relative who was closest to me and I had known my whole life, that's me as a baby being examined by him, my older brother, who revealed much to me as we were growing up, as our parents were somewhat distracted with their social life, was about to leave this earth. I was about to lose my big brother. The one who took me out on the boat and taught me how to fish on the lake where our family had a cottage. We spent many happy summer vacations in our cottage, doing the things that boys do together in the country. Wylie was my summer buddy. Wylie was my best friend. In the city, we went to local public schools until Wylie was 11 years old and was sent away to a private boys-only boarding school about 100 miles away. The first year was tough, but he soon settled into making friends and excelling in his studies. He graduated at 17 and went to work for Canadian National Railways. At home, we were now sharing a room, and he told me about his exploits on the job as he worked the graveyard shift, stapling codes on railway cards for identification. It was a hard job. He soon realized he wanted more, so he persuaded our dad to help him land a scholarship in ROTP, which stands for Regular Officers Training Program. So at 18, he was accepted by the Canadian Army and chose to go to Civilian University in Montreal, which meant he could live at home and get paid to go to school. He liked that idea very much, my brother. In the summer, he would go off to the military training camps such as Gagetown, Nova Scotia, and Petawawa, Ontario, but would return home each fall to go back to school. When he graduated from Sir George Williams University with his degree in hand and with some additional training, the Army posted him to Germany's Black Forest region to serve in Canada's NATO force in Europe. While there, he met a Dutch nurse and had a brief romance. In his further travels, he met a girl from England and married her. Perhaps the close relationship Wylie had with our English mother, actually, after all, he was her favorite, influenced him but the marriage didn't last too many years, and they soon divorced. He served in various posts in the Army and was promoted to captain. He was primarily associated with personnel selection area in the military, which is like the HR department of the Army. I think the most fun he had was serving in Cyprus, where there were lots of beaches and lots of beer. After 22 years in the military service, he mustered out and returned to civilian life, where he got a job in the Ontario government in the Ministry of Labour and Skills. He helped supervise the training programs for the construction trades. While living in Ottawa, he met and married an Ottawa girl whose father was ex-military. Again, although happy for a while, he resisted the lack of freedom in the relationship, and the marriage faltered. Neither of his first two marriages produced any children. He was quite content to let his two brothers go through the trials and tribulations of raising children. This was not for him. In the mid-90s, he met the love of his life, Judy, whom he married 7 years after they met, as he was a bit gun-shy about marriage. She already had 3 grown-up sons, which was fine with him. But then one day, a funny thing happened. Wylie got a call from a researcher in Ottawa, who said something like, "Are you Major Wylie Black, who served in Germany in the 1960s? Yes. Were you there in such and such a time, for such and such a length of time? Yes," said my brother. "What's this all about?" "Well," the person said, "your daughter wants to get in touch with you." My daughter. Needless to say, my brother was shocked. Remember the Dutch nurse he had a brief romance with? Well, she'd become pregnant, and he never knew. He now found out he had a 28-year-old daughter and 2 grandchildren. Soon they were in touch by phone, and arrangements were made to meet, and they came to visit Wylie and Judy at their home near Arden, Ontario, on Big Gull Lake, soon after they were reconnected. Wylie and Judy moved there a few years before he retired at 65, so he could be closer to his passion, which was fishing. Although Wylie only got 3 years out of his retirement, they were amongst the happiest of his life. He wasn't a religious man, but he loved nature, and he knew it was futile to try and build a monument to himself with his life. He lived simply, and he lived honestly. He did not have a mean bone in his body. While in the military, he would have been hard-pressed to hurt anybody. I guess that's why he chose personnel work as his vocation. When we went to that private school, there was a poem that all the students had to memorize. It certainly had a profound effect upon me in my life. And I'm sure the meaning was not lost on Wylie as he grew older, and perhaps he reflected on the words we learned all those years ago in school. To my late great brother Wylie, I dedicate these words by Percy Shelley in his poem Ozymandias, to be the closing thoughts to the life of Wylie Black. I met a traveler from an antique land who said to vast, trunkless legs of stone, "Stand in the desert, near them on the sand half sunk, his shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them, the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look upon my work, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing besides remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands